Chase, you have to get rid of one meal for the rest of your life. It's either going to be breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Breakfast.
Yep.
You fool.
I like sleeping, so I miss breakfast most days anyway.
You're going to tell me, like, when you wake up for work, you don't eat anything?
No.
Wow, you're just out there raw dogging your mornings, huh?
Mostly. Yeah. Like if the days I go into the office, I'll grab like a granola bar because they have them at the office.
That's not breakfast. That's a tease.
Yeah. Oh, but like I'm a lunch guy and I'm a dinner guy. And while I love breakfast foods, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of great breakfast foods. And, on the weekends, I like having a nice breakfast or cooking a nice breakfast for myself. But if you're telling me I have to get rid of one, I'm barely awake for breakfast. So I'm fine to skip.
When's the last time you're just like on a weekend, you wake up, you're like, I'm going to go out and get breakfast?
Go out to get breakfast? Ooh. I don't know. It might have been that time I went with you and your wife.
We are breakfast fans at my house for sure.
Like there's been many times where I've woken up and it's like it's time to put that sausage in the pan and get some eggs and
is that an
do it upright
or something?
Get something going.
Yeah,
but no, I don't go out for breakfast all that often.
All right, I think I probably would do breakfast. I would keep breakfast and dinner. I'd probably get rid of lunch if I had to get rid of one.
Oh man, I need lunch.
You can't skip lunch.
I need it.
But I think that luckily we don't have to do that. I do probably not by my own choosing. Well, I guess it is my own choosing because I could eat something, but breakfast will be the meal during work weeks that I'll be like, I'll skip this. And I've kind of had to adjust I used to have like a proper lunch break. I don't really get that anymore. So I just kind of graze in between calls and do that. But the one thing you can't skip is episode 399 of the Casual Hour, because tonight on this wonderful day, it is Thursday, the 21st November. We now have in our possession the nominees for Jeff Keighley's Game Awards.
Breaking news from days ago.
We'll finally tell you about it. We're gonna give you not anything you probably don't already have access to when it comes to this content, but we are going to give you some of our thoughts on it, as we have been running our own Game of the Year segment for years now. And as people,
we're experts. We know how a Game of the Year show should go.
But we do have some opinions on how we approach topics. And if you are unfamiliar with the ethos of the Casual Hour Game of the Year criteria, you'll hear a little bit about that tonight to get ready for our content, which is going to start, when is that? The week of the 16th? Yeah.
That's so soon. That's less than a month away.
Less than a month. December 16th, December 18th, and December 20th will be the 3 days that we cover Game of the Year. But we're going to talk about that. We've got a little update on some games that we've been playing, so we're going to get right into that. And Chase, you had mentioned that you've just been sticking with Metaphor. I'm sure we'll be talking about that around the week of the 16th.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to tell you about... Well, I did tell Bobby specifically about my new ladies in Fire Emblem Heroes. I'm still playing that. I still play Drop 7. I still play Hold Down. I'm still playing the Pokemon Trading Card Game Pocket and having a lot of fun with that. But it's Metaphor, a long game, and I'm trying to put my time into it.
Wonderful. I love that game, and I am honestly working my ass off right now to get back to that game, and I think I'm getting close because I've been playing Dragon Age: The Veilguard, and I'm at the point now where I'm on the final companion quest, where when you do that, you unlock new skills that were tied behind it, and you get a legendary armor for your companions on that. But I was not prepared for the consequences that they start bringing into. It's not all rainbows and roses with your companions, and there's some tough shit that you have to decide. So I feel like they've really dialed the stakes up, which have been a bit absent in the storytelling thus far. But Act 3 is bringing the heat, and I'm really enjoying it. That combat's great. I feel pretty unstoppable as a Spellblade mage, but I'm getting near, I think, the conclusion of Dragon Age, and had a hell of a time with it. Much like you, still playing a lot of the Pokemon game. I've been hunting the Blastoise EX card with no luck.
I just got one of those yesterday.
God damn, I want it bad. But I did
But
get
I don't have a War Turtle, so I can't actually play the card because I don't have the evolution for it. I also have like 3 different Gyarados cards, no Magikarps. It's like what
oh
the fuck am I supposed to do with
well,
this?
do you know that you can wishlist cards in that game?
A wish list? No, I know you can just straight up buy them with like the pack points, but I've
Yeah.
been trying to save pack points for something big.
So if you go into your deck view and there's a toggle at the top where like when you go into your deck view by default, it has all of your cards. And I think it's like a 3-row grid and they're a little
Okay.
bit larger. If at the top is a toggle, if you tap that, it's going to give you a wider grid and it has all the gaps in your collection. If you tap on one of the cards, it will pull it up and then there's a heart above it that says wish list. And that way, if you're going through Wonder Trading, any card that you have wishlisted, they'll have a heart by it. So you have a quick scan.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. Okay.
Yep. So
Like I'm mostly just like looking and seeing because there's a little icon that says whether you have it in your collection or not, and I'm just kind of counting every time. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that one, this person has 1 card I don't have. This person has 2 cards I don't have, and
Yep.
making judgments based on that. But yeah, that'd be nice,
Yep.
especially
So-
for like hunting. Because what I have done is like go through the theme collections that they have and be like, all right, well, I'm still missing the Metapod, but that's the last one I need for the Viridian Forest. And
Yep.
okay, that one comes out of the Pikachu pack, so I need to keep opening Pikachu packs, and hopefully I'll get that.
Totally.
So I've been doing some of that stuff, just like not with the app's help, but that seems nice to have that kind of option in there.
Totally. So I've been playing a lot of that still. And then you and I went back to Balatro because of stuff we'll talk about in the back half of the episode. But I have a mystery game, not to be following your footsteps, but I don't think you and I have ever talked about this game. And
All right.
one Brad Shoemaker was talking in their preview episode that he's like, I downloaded this. I've been wanting to play it. It looks rad as hell. And I went back and I saw this game and I said, you're right, Brad. This does look rad as hell. And I proceeded to purchase a game called Beyond Galaxyland.
I don't think I've ever heard of this game.
Chase, I think you would like this game quite a bit.
I don't want to hear that, Bobby. Not with only a month left of until Game of the Year and a lot on my plate.
This game is made by Sam Enright. And Sam has made one other game called The Greater Good. I'm not familiar. Oh, wait. Yeah, The Greater Good is the only thing he's made. That came out in 2018. This came out on September 24th, 2024. It is 15 buckaroos, and it is on the Switch.
I did see that.
This is a turn-based micro JRPG, or I guess you could call it like an... I think it's JRPG, but it's an action RPG. Not action RPG, I'm sorry. It is an RPG for sure. Turn-based RPG. Okay. I've heard people say it's like, hey, they put Star Wars in my Final Fantasy. And I was okay with that for sure. This is very interesting. At times, I'm like, okay, yeah, this was made by one person. And I don't mean to sound like a dick when I say that. And then other times, I'm like, holy shit, this was made by one person? This is insane. It's got a really great tone to it. It doesn't seem to take itself too serious in the writing so far. But I only have my character whose name is Doug, and I have Boom Boom as my sidekick. The premise here is you are on Earth. Some shit goes sideways. You kind of get taken away, and you realize that Earth has been wiped out. And there's been a lot of folks that have found a way to kind of avoid that. And they end up in Galaxyland. And you are away from everything you've known. You're dealing with that shit and you don't love it. You are wielding a wooden sword for some reason. And Boom Boom, I didn't mention this, when you left Earth, Boom Boom is your guinea pig. And when you get to Galaxyland and the process of getting there, Boom Boom gets big. And Boom Boom is a bipedal fucking guinea pig with a blaster that hangs out with you and can talk now.
All right.
But the combat's really interesting in this for a turn-based game. This is where I think you might enjoy it. Or you might hate it. The game has a lot of the things you would expect. Attack, it has abilities, and it has summons, and I'll talk to you a little bit about summons in a minute. But what's interesting about this is your action points for your abilities. Those are earned by hits landed by you. And as you go to attack, you usually have anywhere from 4 to 5 chances to attack. And you just do that by, when it's your turn, I'm up, I'm going to swing my sword. I'm just going to press A 4 to 5 times. And I'm going to run up and hit you. So there's a little action input with it that way.
Okay.
But you can miss. But for every hit you land, you earn an action point. And for every miss you have, I think you either lose 1 or you lose 2 points. And if you only go up and hit once and then end your turn, you automatically bank your points and then you have AP for the next time. So if I knew, and they're shared between your entire party. So your action points can go up to 10. And as you're trying to figure it out between the two of them, you're maybe somebody needs to use an ability. Like Doug has this big sweeping attack that hits everybody. So maybe I want to bank the points and use that attack to take out more enemies at once. But I mentioned the summons, and this is where I think it gets really cool. This game has a whole ass fucking creature collector part to it. And any enemy that you're fighting, if you use 5 action points, you can actually capture this creature and then it becomes a summon. And so it's not like they're out in battle with you. They are just there and they have a move set. So because they level up with you as you level your character up. So I found a baby raptor. And when you start off with this baby raptor, its first ability is just psych. And that increases the strength of the attack. So then if you keep upgrading it, it's lunge. And they have their own point currency for your summon attacks. So I could go out, it does count as your turn, but maybe I'm out of action points. Maybe my standard attack isn't going to get the job done. I can then go in and use one of my summons. And I had my first boss encounter and I was like, certainly I can't capture the boss. There's no way I can capture the boss. I captured the boss. And
that's cool.
Yeah. But you need to, get their health down. And there's a little robot companion that you have with you that you can at any point in time just photograph any character on the screen. And if you do that, it goes into your codex. But that's how you get details for your fight. So if you just come across a random enemy, you can kind of do the attack before the battle to get some health off of them and engage and start it that way.
Sure.
If you have a photograph of them, you can go and research and look up things about that enemy type. But when you're in battle now, all their health bar and all that stuff is there if you photograph them. So that stuff I think is really cool. I would say it's not very complicated. This is a very breezy, a very laid back, and I think a 14-hour-ish game.
Yeah, I was seeing 12 to 14 on how long to beat when I looked it up.
It does look like you're going to have a pretty cool party of folks, maybe 5 different people to choose from. But the other thing that I think is interesting is it's a game based on blueprints. So you're getting all kinds of shit when you're out in the world, like rope. You might get parts and pieces, and then you unlock blueprints.
Uh-oh. Hang on. Bobby, are you trying to sell me on a crafting game?
It's not it's not full-blown crafting, but
okay. You certainly wouldn't want your crafting to be full-blown.
No. Here's an example. I unlocked a blueprint for tonic. So now if I have these 3 things,
get some gin.
I can just make some gin on the run and do it that way. I haven't found anything for weapons, but after beating or capturing that boss, I now have a stone sword, and Boom Boom has a pistol that has a lower hit rate. Has a lower attack rate, but can hit all enemies at once now, which is pretty cool. But I think the pixel art in this is awesome. There's a parallaxing that they do. Cool. If you are talking with people, the camera kind of bounces back and kind of tilts in a really cool parallaxing way. It zooms in and out. I look, not that we need anything else like this right now, but it's really fucking slick. The biggest complaint I have thus far, and I don't know game dev. I think Steam makes this very easy. It's just an API you can turn on, but this game does not support Steam Cloud. And that's a big deal for me because I like to play games on the go. This would be a perfect handheld game, but it doesn't have cloud save, so I have to kind of pick a spot to play it right now.
Man,
And
if only you had like some device that worked like in handheld mode,
I
but
don't
then
know
could
if the Switch could
also
run this. I think it might struggle a bit.
it's on Switch, you said.
A lot of things are on the Switch, Chase, but
It doesn't necessarily mean it runs well, I suppose.
no, I think this would
Um,
actually be a dream. I have thought about just stopping where I'm at and picking it up there, but I also think that there's a way I could just transfer the save file over to my ROG and just make that like an exclusive place where I'm playing it, which probably makes
yeah.
sense at this point.
So my only question, I'm liking a lot of what I'm seeing here.
Hmm.
It's how jokey is the game? Because like I'm seeing in a trailer here, there's like a guy eating some food and then a basketball gets thrown at his food or whatever. It's
I
how silly are we talking?
I don't think it's offensively unfunny like a Borderlands would be by any
Okay,
stretch, but I think it certainly is going in that, like, not the Borderlands direction, but it's trying to be very like, what would be a good example of like, it wants to be very quirky. It's like
mm,
it's trying very hard to be a quirky game, like Boom Boom, just the name, like Boom Boom. Oh, that's Boom Boom, like the whole approach to it.
yeah,
Um Doug, so far, like anytime he talks about Earth, he just starts crying. And so that, like, they're playing that part a whole lot where it's like, oh yeah, I could see, like, 'cause the first time when he wakes up, he's like, wait, anybody I love is gone. I'm like, okay, you're having a reaction. That makes sense. You're processing a lot. But they
hmm
kind of like drag that out a little bit. Um I I would say that so far for me, like I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I don't know if there's any language localization stuff happening with this on, like, maybe it's just translation. I don't think that's the case. I could be wrong, but it's very silly. It's not an epic by any.
yeah,
It's just not that.
okay,
I I'm at a point. Yeah, I've probably put like 2 hours into this game, and I'm having a really good time with it. But I don't know if I'm at a point now, especially at this stage of the year, where I'd be like, "Hey, you need to drop what you're doing and check out Beyond Galaxy Land."
sure,
I think if there was ever a time where you're like, I got a small gap to fill here with something, like, I can pick this up. It's not expensive. I think there is a lot of good happening with it, but
yeah,
yeah, that's Beyond
Y-
Galaxyland. 15
yeah. I mean, at the
bucks.
very least, I can throw it on a wish list and
Yeah,
see what happens.
totally. Um, yeah, I think it wears a lot of its influences on its sleeve, and you'll know pretty quick. Maybe watch a little, like, somebody, if they have like any gameplay where you can see some of the writing in there with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. So I'm just gonna try and wrap up Dragon Age over the next few days. I'll keep playing Balatro and Beyond Galaxyland. I think I will keep kicking that around a bit, but my focus is getting back to Metaphor. That's where I want to be right now.
It's a pretty good game.
I agree. It is a game of the year contender, Chase. If we we've got, how many categories does he have? Jesus, there's more this year than ever, right? There's one,
Uh,
two, three,
there might
four.
actually be less because there used to be a lot more esports categories than there are
I
now.
I think there's
But
29 categories to get
there
through.
are a lot. There are a lot, and we are certainly not going to cover each of
No.
them in depth. Like some of these, we probably don't care about at all, and don't need to mention. But yeah, like we just to back up a little bit. You kind of mentioned it at the beginning. Um, there's a lot of people talking about the nominees and being
Yeah,
disgruntled for one way or the other. You know, a game got left off, or
the game got added
how
to it.
how did that game get make it to that category in the first place, or the pretty. It was like the day before the nominees rolled out, where Keeley's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, DLC's fine to be nominated now," and
Well,
then it was.
the language with it was also very strange because, and I don't want to bury the lead here because we'll get into it. Honestly, I'll just shut up because I have a lot of thoughts on that one,
Yeah.
and even the language used there, I think that they use something like substantial. I don't remember what they use. I'll try and find the tweet, but
Yeah, there was something like that. Just It just like some real weird kind of like only what we think is worthy of this is just some real
Absolutely.
arbitrary stuff. And one other thing I wanted to mention is I saw a post on Blue Sky where I am now because I escaped the other place, and they were trying to do. I like Blue Sky, but I think there's way too many people who are trying to not make the same mistakes they did on Twitter and overcorrecting a little bit of like we need to make this eh, not so much we need to make this a safe space, but like we need to, not do the bullshit that was over there. And I think they're almost taking the fun out of social media sometimes. And one person was saying, in the same way that you don't have to comment on something if you don't like it, like you don't have to watch the Game Awards. Like you can just live without commenting about the Game Awards
Motherfuckers.
and it's fine. Like who cares about this show? You don't have to give it that much thought. And on one hand, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, as you mentioned, we have a Game of the Year segment. We care about this stuff for better or worse, and I would argue worse. The Game Awards are a highly publicized, highly talked about uh, event, and it does kind of end up mattering at some point. So
Dude,
when we
that's
want to
like
see our pastime get represented, to have the Game Awards make these decisions does affect us in some way. And I think it's
totally.
worth us discussing, even if at the end of the day we come to the same conclusion of, yeah, hey, the Game Awards, they kind of fucked it up again, whatever. But I
I
still think the conversation is worth having.
absolutely. I care, some would say, too much about this topic. It is obviously this is episode 399. We have a lot to say about video games on and off air. And for me, it is something that, despite my frustrations with it, I have a conviction to always celebrate it because it is a big fucking thing. Like, we have very few things like this anymore where there's a dedicated space to get together and talk about what's to come and what has been in video games. And I am of the age where I grew up looking forward, and maybe some years not knowing better because I was an idiot, like E3. Like, I that was a
Yeah.
big thing for me. And having the Game Awards, I do recognize that for what I would probably want this show to be, it's not, which would
Yeah,
be more
and
of a
and it's never going to be because of money stuff and all sorts of shit.
almost assuredly, dude. Like, there are so many obvious. I can't remember if it was last year they talked about, or maybe it was the Summer Game Fest where they talked about it this year. Like, how much a game trailer cost to show there, like what it cost to be.
There was just a news story that the prices got hiked up. Like they're now like $428,000 for a spot where
Jesus
they were like
Christ.
300 or something last
How many
last time.
fucking devs could have kept their jobs with that money? Like,
Yeah,
it's silly shit. But tonight for us, I had mentioned this, and Chase, I'll let us kind of unpack what's going on here, but we've always had some pretty strict rules for how we approach not only the conversation episodes of Game of the Year, but most certainly on what our definitive Game of the Year top 10 list is for the show. For individual lists, you can kind of do whatever the fuck you want here on the show.
totally.
But when it comes down to what we put pen to paper on and we push out there to the public, we have a few things that we look at. We don't want it to be DLC. We don't. I think we allow a remaster if it's substantial enough, if I'm not mistaken.
Remasters we do not, but remakes if they are
Remakes, yes.
substantial enough, yes.
Like, I think the easy one to point to on that would be a Resident Evil 2 remake.
Totally. But like to give you an example of one I probably wouldn't count is Thousand Year Door, which while it did get like a complete graphical overhaul, it is still pretty much 100% the same game.
Yeah.
With like some localization tweaks and some graphical overhaul, but other than that, it's basically the same. There's not really a bunch of new content in there. I wouldn't really count that towards Game of the
Well,
Year.
let me ask you this one then. This year, we had Persona 3 Reloaded that came out. Would that be something that would be on a top 10 for us?
I mean, that one's tougher because I didn't play the original, and it's hard for me to tell what is new versus what is not. And I guess that's also technically true for Thousand Year Door, but I just know enough about Thousand Year Door to know that that didn't get there.
Yeah.
Um, the great thing for me with Persona is like I didn't play Persona 3 Reloaded, so it doesn't make any of my
Yeah,
lists.
well, I'm in the same
But
boat, but I think that kind of starts to get into the territory that I think is important for you and I to discuss tonight, primarily on some of
yeah,
these topics.
I think there's always going to be fuzzy situations, and we've had this discussion when it comes to most of our categories for most of our years. We had a category that we're still going to do, but it feels like we talk about it every year and try to figure out how we want to do it. That was best debut.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea behind best debut, when I tried to come up with it, was like I want to celebrate like newness in video games. There's so many
Yeah.
fucking sequels and things that are based on franchises. I want something that's fucking brand new and feels like makes me feel good about new video games. And there would be years where you or our other co-host or even me sometimes would try to like slip in a game of like, well, like yeah, it's Star Wars, but like it's like a new franchise for Star Wars and it features characters that aren't part of Star Wars. And I would, do my nerd actually, that's from that's Star Wars isn't really new, and but there would be times where we'd have these conversations, and I think that's can make for interesting discussion. But I think some of the things on here just don't feel interesting when I'm looking at the
Well,
Game Awards.
here's another thing. We love our polls, Chase,
Yeah.
and we actually had our most responsive one yet. I asked the question 3 days ago when the nominees came out. With the nominees for the Game Awards out, I'm curious, should DLC be considered for Game of the Year? Let's hear your thoughts. And we had like not only a big turnout here, we had a lot of dialogue going on. Very, very passionate conversation, but 22% of the 180 votes we got, Chase, say absolutely it should be.
Okay.
Where 78% of the
So
180 say
22% is a large portion to be wrong.
correct. 78% says no way. But then, there's some what I would consider to be not productive comments on this. One of which is, well, when DLC has more content than a AAA game, it should be considered that. And while what is your definition there? And I think this is where it gets a little murky for me on this topic. Clearly for me, when I look at Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree being on this list, you cannot play that game without the very publicly nominated Elden Ring
Yeah.
from 2 years ago. It can't be done. So you have to buy the game to play this. And while I think that there's a substantial amount of content inside of this DLC, is it what does it do that Elden Ring didn't do?
Well, and also, in my opinion, and this is from a person who hasn't played Elden Ring, hasn't played Shadow of the Erdtree, but like the character that you take into Erdtree is still the same character you used from Elden Ring.
It's an expansion for me, like in my opinion.
Yeah, the one that I would come back to that would probably be murkier for me, and I don't remember how I treated this when the game first came out, was Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon,
Mhm.
which was, I believe, like a whole separate file.
Oh yeah,
Like a whole separate download. You could just get that instead of Far Cry 3 if you wanted to, which did
I
make a
think
big
they.
deal for
I don't
for
think
this.
you had to have. I don't think you had to have the base game to play that.
Correct. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I was trying to say. But I mean, yes, it used some assets and it used mechanics and code certainly from Far Cry 3,
sure.
but it was a brand new experience with a brand new character with a brand new set of weapons and areas and story to it. And I think that one would be a harder question for me of whether that should be counted for game of the year or not. And I'm fine when something is murky and we have that conversation, but I think there are some things that feel like we're slipping a little bit too much just so we can get another year of Elden Ring content, which I know it's a big popular game, but when it comes to something like the Game Awards, it starts to smack of like, there's some money involved. People, we
Sure.
want to keep up our relationship with From Software. We don't want to relegate this to a thing. And this is starting to get into conspiracy theory territory, which I don't really want to get into. But at some point, you're like, it kind of just would make sense if that were the case. So there might be some truth to it. I don't know. It makes too much sense not to be true.
I I think that like even after you and I had dinner this week, I was trying to think of the last like amazing DLC that I played where I was like, holy shit, that completely changed how I viewed a portion of what I experienced before. And
Mm,
I can go back a few times in my life. I think earliest would probably be Shadow Broker with Mass Effect. Like I thought that
sure.
was just incredible. The Witcher had Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine, and arguably some of the best DLC I've ever experienced. But then last year we had this resurgence in Cyberpunk where they really had their coming back to fame, and they put out Phantom Liberty, and that introduced alongside a complete overhaul of how you spec your character, the weapons you would have, the mechanics of the game, and a completely new like story that would change the end depending on what you did in Phantom Liberty, because it takes place during the main game. It would change the ending of the game for you. And
Yeah.
so for me, like I could see an argument being made there for this. And I don't even like saying that out loud though, because there's too much bias at play, and it makes it like I need to have some sort of rule when it comes to a game of the year award on how do you know, like if I'm playing DLC, I'd like to be able to know, very technically speaking, that this qualifies on its own merits, not because it made an impact on me, but what boxes does this have to check? Is it an hour count? Is it a mechanic that changes? Like what goes into this becoming? I loved I completely forgot about Blood Dragon, and that's a great call out here because while it is more of Far Cry 3, I think it's critical to point out you do not need Far Cry 3 to play this game. You can go and download this and have that there. Even if it uses assets from it, it's the same thing. In a lot
Yeah.
of ways, like I think Tears of the Kingdom is kind of like, hey, we had this being DLC.
Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom absolutely uses some assets from
Correct.
Breath of the Wild in the same way that the Mask one, Jesus Christ, on the
Majora's
64,
Mask
Majora's
with
Mask.
yeah.
Like Majora's Mask absolutely just uses assets from Ocarina of Time, but they are separate games with separate ideas to them, and I think it does, like those games do like break out from their original parts to be a brand new thing.
Yep.
Here's like another super murky one. That we've never really dealt with because we've always put it into like a separate category, and now we don't have to worry about it at all because I'm clean. But
Yeah.
Destiny, like
Yes.
who could possibly argue that the Destiny 2 that you can play right now is anywhere close to the Destiny 2 you played when it first came out in 2017? They're basically completely separate games. It is you have your same character, you might even have some guns that you've stored for that whole time, but those are fundamentally different games. And unlike something like a Far Cry 3 versus Blood Dragon, you can't play the original Destiny 2 anymore. That game is
No.
gone. It is just this new Destiny 2. And we've seen game awards, and we'll even talk about it here, where they have like a best ongoing category where you shove some of that stuff. And we've done the same thing with like a best additional content. And but I could see somebody trying to argue like, oh well, this Destiny expansion or this Diablo 4 expansion or this World of Warcraft expansion like fundamentally changed the game, and it feels like a brand new thing and it should be thought of as a brand new thing. And I think those are conversations that are worth having. Um it's just again, when it comes to the Game Awards, TM, that is where I start to think like I feel like money is driving these decisions more than it
Oh,
is a creative pursuit or wanting
well,
to recognize creative, a
l-
well done piece of creative.
let me read this to you because I got the actual fucking tweet here and it makes me even more pissed off. All
Okay.
right. Are DLCs, expansion packs, and remakes/remasters eligible? The Game Awards aims to recognize the best creative and technical work each year, irrespective of the format of the content's release. Expansion packs, new game seasons, DLCs, remakes, and remasters are eligible in all categories if the jury deems the new creative and technical work to be worthy of a nomination. Factors such as the newness of the content and its price/value should be taken into consideration.
So here's, honestly, when I hear it like that, it sounds a little bit better. But it comes back to another issue I have with the Game Awards, and it's something that we have done differently because of how we've come up. To go back a little bit, Bobby, I believe you and I are fans, or used to be fans, of the Giant Bombcast
Yeah.
and Giant Bomb in general. And their Game of the Year stuff was legendary,
Oh yeah.
where they would have all these funky categories, which is kind of where we
Got
basically
ours.
pulled from
Yeah.
because we wanted to have a bunch of funky categories. Um, but more important than the funky categories is you would see how the sausage gets made. You'd have these 4 and 5 hour podcasts where
God,
you'd
those are
hear them make the
gauntlets.
nominations, discuss why something got nominated, hear people, have opinions about it, and then you'd see how they would get to the final process and go, okay, XCOM Enemy Unknown was our game of the year instead of Saints Row 4 or Saints Row 3. And you have a whole 4 hours to go listen and understand why they got to that decision. And the Game Awards is such a black box to that stuff. You just see what won.
Yeah.
You barely even really know who the people are who are voting on this stuff or who gets a say. Um, and it makes a lot of it feel really arbitrary. Now, I'm not saying the Game Awards should be a 4 hour show where people are debating in a room. That would not be fun television. Well, I mean, it'd be fun for me, but like Jeff
Well,
Keighley
I
can't
don't think
sell.
Chris Judge is going to be speaking this year, so
Yeah, well, fair enough. I don't think Jeff Keighley can sell enough Schick Quattro ads to make
God.
something like that work. But even in that bit that you were talking about here of how our jury deems it necessary, well, what kind of notes are you giving your jury on how they should
That's my
be
point.
thinking about this? Are you
Yeah.
leaving this open to interpretation? I know they had like, here are some considerations, but without guidelines that help people really figure out, okay, how much new content is enough for us to finally say that should be something that's worth nominating versus this is something that's not worth nominating. It feels a little bit more like a black box in that way,
I
that makes the whole thing feel bad to me when we just see a game randomly win. You go, okay, sure, whatever. I guess that doesn't mean anything to me, but
I know I'm going to be on the outside of this, so like I'm just going to rip the band-aid off. I think I'm just even more mad that it's fucking Elden Ring. And
sure. It's a
like
it's a game that we don't care about. It's from a franchise of games that we don't really care
well,
about.
it's not only
It's from a
that, dude.
developer that outside of like maybe like a game or two here or there, we just haven't cared about as much.
Does I would it be fucking wild if this DLC wasn't fucking earth-shattering for a game that most people are saying is the greatest game ever made? And while I'm not here to say the game's bad, it's not for me. I don't like those types of games. I respect the hell out of it. I tried liking this one. This is the closest I got. But at the end of the day, that game dominated every fucking conversation. And it has still kept up in most categories. But I
Yeah.
will tell you, in a lot of the circles that I frequent, where that game was very popular and discussed, most of them walked away from the DLC and did not find it to be nearly as good as the core game.
Yeah. I think my problem is even in Keely's tweet that you read out there, like the idea is celebrating the creative that people have done this year. And
For sure.
while I do not doubt that From Software spent a lot of time and creative resources to make something like Shadow of the Erd Tree, and it could be fantastic. Again, I don't know, I didn't play it, but I believe people who say it's fantastic. The idea, though, is that they already got their flowers. We had a whole year, as you mentioned, where
Absolutely.
where Elden Ring, like we celebrated Elden Ring. Don't worry about it. It got celebrated. And this is a new year, and there are a bunch of brand new games out that are incredibly good.
Hmm.
There's so many fucking games out that are good every year
Yeah.
that I don't think we need to worry about
Do,
talking, no, like worry about celebrating a piece of DLC or additional content or update or whatever, because I feel like that just overshadows the year that was. Like this we should be we should be celebrating new things. I like celebrating new
Yeah.
things. And bolting on a piece of content, no matter how good that content is, like bolting on a piece of content just doesn't feel new. And that the
Well,
idea that we would celebrate that over brand new ideas hurts me a little bit.
I think that you bring up something that it's not unique to this category we're talking about. Where yeah, we would love to know how they debated and kind of came up with and whittled down their list to 6. That's why we like the prior Giant Bomb ones.
Yeah.
But I would even take it a step further. I'd like to know how you come to any fucking conclusion on some of these categories, because they look very fucking shallow and they don't lack any fucking insight to what you use as a measurement of success in your decision making. Is it pure
Totally.
bias? Like what is this? Like, how do you come up with this?
Yeah. So, okay. So we're 40 minutes into the podcast. We haven't read down any of the real nominees. So why don't we actually go through some of this list? And I think we can illustrate more of our problems with it as we go through
Do
some
you
of
want
these
me to do
categories.
the game of the year break? Like,
Let's start with game of the year, and
Yeah.
we'll go down and we'll see what happens.
So your 6 your 6 choices are Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Metaphor Refantasio as your game of the year picks.
Now I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say this list is fine. Obviously I don't like the Shadow of the Erdtree pick, but we've discussed that to death at this point.
Yeah.
The rest of them are basically fine. I guess some people were bitching about Black Myth Wukong, that it's like one of the lowest rated game of the year nominees ever.
I saw, it's funny seeing the normies ask about fucking what the fuck is a Balatro. I'm like, listen.
Yeah. I mean, Balatro, there's almost always like a token indie game on this list, right? And Balatro, token or not, fucking rules, as we again proved on Monday.
Yeah.
And as we prove every time anybody loads up that game, it's fucking fantastic.
I think it'll probably, I'll just say it now, man. Like a couple years from now, Balatro will be the game that people are still playing off this list.
Probably. I mean, but it's also a game that's built to be played
that's what I'm
much later.
Like,
yeah.
It's got that staying power. But yeah, I think this is a pretty non-offensive list outside of Elden Ring.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I bet it doesn't have outside of like Balatro and maybe Metaphor. Probably doesn't have anything that's going to be in my top 10.
Do you have
I don't know.
What do you think? Who's the standout on that category?
I don't. Come on, I don't really care.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess in this I would want Balatro to win.
Sure.
But
we'll see. we have game of the year. We've got best game direction, best narrative.
Let's talk about best game direction. Bobby, why don't you read the 6 nominees for best game direction?
Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring, Final Fantasy, and Metaphor.
That list sounds familiar.
Let's go to the next one.
What's the fucking point of having 2 categories? I know what the point is. It's the same point as having like a best movie and then best director or different categories. It's like, oh, well, we can give direction to, the second place game, or like the one that we could give Balatro the best game direction, so we can give Shadow of the Erdtree, game of the year. And I get that it kind of allows you to pick 2 game of the years, but it sucks. It sucks to have a category that is just the same 6 games from the other category. That's lame.
So if you had to, because like you go from best direction into best narrative, and I feel like those are also holding hands in a way.
Maybe like game direction just feels like such a larger thing. Like I cannot separate what the difference is between a game of the year and what game I thought had the best direction. Like
this is what's interesting.
That's just what the best game is.
The only thing that they give you when you're going to make a vote here, and you can do that, by the way, if you're listening to this or watching it live, you can go and vote right now. But it says best game direction awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction and design. So, okay, then we go over here to best narrative for outstanding storytelling and narrative development in a game. Okay. So far, best art direction though. For outstanding creative and or technical achievement in artistic design and animation. I'm going to go back again to best game direction. Awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction. This is literally the Jim Gaffigan Mexican feud skit. What is a tostada? It's a tortilla with meat and cheese. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, and I think his descriptors are bad, but I think it makes we have this with our same categories. It's just I think we talk about them a little bit better,
Yeah.
and maybe it's just that you can't sum it into a single sentence. But narrative is like it's the story of the game. Like what game had the best story to it, and art direction is about the visuals certainly, and game direction is all of it. Like that's my problem, is like game direction just feels like all of it, and all of it feels like the same as talking about a game. And if you want to say like, oh no, it's about innovation, then I don't necessarily think the 6 most innovative games are also the 6 best games of the year. I think those should be separate lists, which having them just be the same 6 games, especially if Shadow of the Erd Tree is on here, because again, what did you innovate? You built upon built upon an original game. And where's the innovation?
But dude, beyond all that, this is a chance for you to cast a wider net and throw flowers at games that would never be a game of the year, ever. But maybe there was something very spectacular that a game did above and beyond anything else, and on that merit alone. And there's a game that they do that with in best art direction. You get to see Neva on there, which it should be. That's the one thing that game. If you and I were talking based off of what you've shared with me so far and what I've seen,
that's its strongest aspect. Yeah,
100%. Here's where I get even more pissed off about how they designate this stuff. Best performance. I go in here, awarded to an individual for voice over acting, motion, and or performance capture. That's cool. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But then they have these 5 individuals, and all they have is their actual name and the game they're in. They don't even list what fucking character they did this for.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Is that what it just is on the website?
Yeah.
I've only seen IGN's list, so some people sometimes
will
like
the
take
website right now.
Okay, that's pretty sad. Like you should tell people who the character is.
Like right here, Brianna White.
Help us out.
Like it could say Brianna White, and then I don't know if she was Aerith. Is she Tifa? Is she both?
She's Aerith.
Okay, so then beneath that it should say Aerith, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's not that fucking hard.
It's
Jeff,
really
you
not.
Fucking dork. But
yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on some of these. Like best narrative. Metaphor is on there, and hey, I like Metaphor. That story is stupid. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about the best narrative in a game. I know it's an Atlas game, so we're like, oh, it probably has a good story. It doesn't really. It's fine. Like it can be a good game without a good story. But is it one of the 5 best this year?
Well,
apparently.
I mean,
also Silent Hill 2's on here. Silent Hill 2, I don't think the story changed that much from when the original Silent Hill 2 came out. It's a remake, goddammit.
So I think like off the cuff, again, I'm going off the first row here. Game of the year, best game direction, best narrative, best art direction, best score and music. That all tracks. You go to the next line, best audio design, best performance that we commented on. The next one that I am a little perturbed with, not a little bit, quite a bit, is innovation and accessibility. So here's the other part of it. If you look at the descriptor, recognizing software and or hardware that is pushing the medium forward by adding features, technology, and content to help games be played and enjoyed by an even wider audience. Okay? First of all, what would you nominate from a hardware perspective? When you say software and or hardware, what would be nominated for hardware?
So you do like the Xbox adaptive controller.
Okay, fair. But I've never seen anything that wasn't a game nominated here.
No.
But
they're also like what hardware came out this year?
Totally.
Like, if there's not a year where hardware comes out, it's hard to put that in there. I get why he has it in there, but also that feels very apples to oranges if you did try to say, well, here's a controller versus here's a video game. Like those feel very incongruous.
Keep me honest here, Chase, but I don't know if there's any write-in. Do I have a paper ballot anywhere to vote, or is it all done digitally? Digitally, right?
Yes.
On this website.
Yeah, you have to go through the website.
Here's a fucking idea on this category. Make
Uh-huh.
it fucking video clips showing the accessibility features that they have.
Right. I mean, that's my biggest problem, and I've had this problem with this category every single fucking year.
Yes.
I I believe in my heart of hearts that all of these games deserve to be here. I believe they were
Yes.
nominated for a reason, and I'm sure they've earned it. My question is, what did they do to earn it? Like, just
Right.
tell me, because I
Or
don't know, and it doesn't. It, like, same with the best performance. It doesn't tell you why. I agree with you that there should be like something. Like video clips would be great, but
yeah,
anything like
show me a
is
video clip of their performance. Like you get a little teaser trailer at the Oscars of the actor from the movie.
sure, and they will during the award show, but they're not going to do that for. But they're not doing that right now for us as we vote.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, like so innovation and accessibility. You've got Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Okay, what it do? Is it that it did subtitles really really well? Tell me that. Did it do like some kind of adaptive audio design that you hear about gamers who are able to play something blind or even
Yeah.
blindfolded because the audio cues are so good that it tells them exactly where they are in any situation. I don't know. I don't know. Is Diablo 4 just have really great colorblind options? I don't know.
Right. We
It
don't
might.
know anything here. So I think that's where it gets a little frustrating. And this row, fuck this row, because right after that, we get into games for impact.
Yeah.
And for a thought-provoking game with a pro-social meaning or message, what does that fucking say? I can tell you right now what I do know about some of these games. I don't know if it's pro-social, but I think it does go into it. Like, I think this is a fucking junk drawer category for Keighley that he has no respect for how he fucking comes up with it.
It does feel so. It's tough because on one hand, I like the idea of this category, and we have a somewhat similar category for it. Um, but you're right. I don't think there's enough thought put into this category from the Game Awards side to really define what belongs in here, and it ends up just being kind of a hodgepodge of these games were emotional in some way.
Right.
And, uh, you know, the thing we did with our category is that we basically just made it like what game was like the most emotional. We call it the Touchy Feely Award.
Yeah.
I think we're going to keep that title because we like it. It's fun, but it tells you a little bit more about what we're talking about here. It's like, oh, it's a game that, touched us in some way, that made us feel something. Whereas Games for Impact, it feels like it's trying to do more, like it's trying to have a real message to it. When it talks about a social message, that is it trying to touch upon racism in some way, or in an environmentalist message, or it's trying to do something. It wants to elevate the form to something that might lead to a greater impact, as they say, on the world around us, and that's fine. But then again, similar to the accessibility, why are these games nominated? I love Neva. I think Neva's a great game. Fantastic visuals, as we said. What impact is it trying to make? Because outside of like a vague environmentalism message and you should take care of your pets message, it's kind of just a game, and
Sure.
it's
It's a
fine,
platformer.
and it does make me feel emotions. I mean, it is an emotional game, but is it a game that is trying to go for some social impact? I'm not so sure. And I don't like, if you want to argue that, you have to give me a reason of why you think it belongs here, other than just saying, yeah, it probably goes up there. And because that doesn't tell me anything. And a lot of these games I've never heard of. And I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard of these games. So it would be even better if there was some kind of little primer explanation of, what is this game trying to do? Why was it nominated? Why do we think it's a good nominee for Games for Impact? And I would probably be able to read that list and go, Indica seems like something I really need to check out, because I like that message that it's talking about. Oh, closer the distance is it talks about that. Oh, that's interesting. I haven't heard a game talk about that. Maybe let me check it out. But it's not doing that. It's just listing a bunch of games, and people are just going to pick their favorite, and the favorite's going to win.
here is an opportunity to thin the herd. You have two categories, Chase. You have one that says best independent game, and then you
Okay.
have directly after it best debut indie game.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
same fucking category.
yes and no. I think in Jeff's mind here, debut is similar to our debut. Is that it can't be? I think it's supposed to be like a first indie game from a studio.
It
These studios
says
haven't made another indie game before.
the debut is for the best debut game created by a new independent studio. So this would
Right.
be new studios. And then the last one, I'm sorry, for best independent game, it's for outstanding creative and technical achievement in a game made outside of traditional publisher systems.
Yeah, so that's why like Neva is not on best debut indie game because
Just-
Greece was that.
yeah.
They that came and
Same
went.
for-
We
same
already
for
did
UFO
game.
50.
Well, UFO 50, that one's so fucking weird because it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
ton of different creators. Like, yes,
Yeah.
Derek Yu's a part of it, and Derek Yu made Spelunky, so you can't really give Derek Yu best debut indie game. But there's a lot of people who,
But-
collectively, it is maybe their
So-
first like real indie.
Here's my question to you, though. If you have Balatro in the game of the year running,
Uh-huh.
and it's in both of these categories,
Yes.
and none of these other games are in the game of the year or game direction, I
Yep.
think this is kind of clear that in what reality would one of these other games beat Balatro in these categories?
Well, I mean, you're right, and the same thing goes for best action game. Black Myth Wukong is the only one from that list that
Right.
is also a Game of the Year nominee. So, like by transitive property, like it should obviously win, right?
Yes.
And I understand how we being nominated is also still an honor. So
Totally.
you want to have nominees for these other things, but it does make it feel like a foregone conclusion, except when what they do is that sometimes they'll like sneak around and they'll try to get more winners. And so when they undercut it and go like, well, actually the best action game is Stellar Blade. I hope that's not the case. But if they like the best action game is Stellar Blade, but the best game is Black Myth Wukong. See, they're different because like this one's we're thinking like the action in this one is the better, but we think the overall game is like fuck off. No. That's not what it says. It didn't say what the best action is in a game. It says what's the best action game. And if the best action game is a game that's in the game of the year, then that one should fucking win.
Do you think that, I know that we need to wrap it up here, but do you think that Elden Ring is more RPG than it is action or action adventure?
I don't give a
Because
fuck.
when I look at RPGs though, you've got Dragon's Dogma,
Yeah.
Elden Ring, you've had Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, you have Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, and you have Metaphor Refantasio. So you've got two games that are not turn-based. You've got three, and I don't think that's the category here, but when I think about like RPG shit, like
Yeah.
I mean, Elden Ring, you're certainly working on a build. You're doing that. Like, I suppose you can classify it there compared to these other ones, but I might be wrong.
It's why I fought pretty hard, or maybe I didn't have to fight hard. I don't remember how you guys responded to it when I first brought it up, but like I didn't want genre, like best genre for our game of the year, because genres are so murky. Like you can argue
I don't think you had
anything.
to fight hard with on that.
Yeah, I probably didn't, but it would have been a line in the sand I would have drawn. It was like
Yeah.
I don't like outside of some genres like racing game or strategy game. Even strategy game's a little tougher because like are you doing RTSs and turn-based ones or what? But like there are some genres that feel a little bit more set in their ways where you're not going to confuse Legend of Zelda for a racing game, right? But I've always hated action versus action adventure. Like those
Oh
are
my
two
God.
different things. Or the proliferation of RPG elements into video games that just go like, well, I guess anything's an RPG if you think about it. Is Borderlands an RPG? Well, I mean, you put points into things, so it is kind of an RPG. It's like, no, that's a fucking shooter. Like, yes, there are some numbers in it, but like it's a goddamn FPS game. Like, don't get it twisted. And I just end up thinking none of this shit fucking matters. In a way, I would rather celebrate games for more interesting reasons than which little box we put it in terms of like a genre. Which is why I like some of the categories that we have done where we try to find unique ways of talking about games, or finding ways of celebrating a game that probably wouldn't win a traditional category by finding something that we can celebrate about it. And these just feel lazy, I guess, but they just feel so staid to me.
I
Like
don't
there's
think
something
that
so
this,
stale about them.
for the games award, like the pinnacle showcase of video game industry, I feel like it is a very cold and static snapshot of what is, in my opinion, a vibrant and exciting industry full of some of the most artistically driven and creative and mechanically fun things. But you don't hardly get to see that here, and it's a shame. And I wish
Yeah.
it was different. There is the one player's choice stuff that opens up on December 2nd, and you start with 30 nominees and you vote for 10, then you go to 10, vote for 5, and 5 vote for 1.
Yeah.
But look, we're gonna be, if you're listening to this and you're like, these fucking dorks, or if you're listening to this, you're like, I'd like to see how things shake out. Here's what's going on for us as we get into wrapping up.
So, can I pick one more bone?
Yeah, of course.
Because there's another one I don't love, and that is the best ongoing game.
Yeah, for
Which
sure. Tell me about it.
So the nominees they have this year are Destiny 2, Diablo 4, Final Fantasy 14, Fortnite, and Helldivers 2. Which, in a vacuum, I guess is fine. Here's some thoughts though. I would say if you weren't gonna do the dumb bullshit that you did for Game of the Year category, I would say Shadow of the Erd Tree makes Elden Ring an ongoing game this year. That is ongoing content. I am ongoing to play this game because of the new content they added this year. And if they don't add another DLC to it next year, then it's not best ongoing anymore because the game is no longer going. I also feel that a game that is out in its debut year is not ongoing. It's this year's game. And I understand that Helldivers 2 was built to be a game that will be played ongoing, that it has the mechanics, that it will be ongoing. It will continue to have content into 2025 and probably 2026, and that's fine. But I wouldn't call it an ongoing game right now because it's a game right now. Next year it can be an ongoing game. It will be ongoing then.
It's the only thing that they've really had going from like seasons are battle passes. Like they haven't introduced the new enemy type. They've teased it. They've maybe had a few new game types in there. But realistically, man, like I think it's a bit controversial to put this game on here. Like I love Helldivers 2. We've played a lot of that on this show. I think it's fantastic. Yeah. With that being said, their history is checkered at best on how they've supported that game this year. And that's not only by Arrowhead's hand, that's a lot by Sony Entertainment. But I will say,
and Arrowhead even being handcuffed by Sony in some ways. And there is a best community support category, which I think absolutely is a crapshoot where you could put whatever you wanted in there. And Helldivers 2 is in that one as well. And I think it's fine in there. I think it's fine to talk about the best community support from a current year. But when you're saying best ongoing game and only one of the 5 titles is a game from this year, it feels like we couldn't give Helldivers 2 a game of the year spot, so we had to find some other categories where we could go.
Totally.
And it will be an ongoing game, so let's just go ahead and put it in there. And that just feels like a category that was built to celebrate a game that has continued success, like an Elden Ring. But then they decided that's not what we're going to do with Elden Ring, so we're going to fuck this whole we're going to fuck up multiple categories instead of just one.
So
and
gross.
that bums me out because it just feels like it just feels like horse trading at that point in a way that isn't getting to the mission that Jeff states of wanting to celebrate the creativity from this year. Because if that was true, you'd put games from this year into this year categories, and you'd put games from other years into other year categories, and they're not doing that.
Look, we've got a lot going on here. As I've been talking about at this point ad nauseum for what's going on, we're in the holiday season, and first of all, we want to make sure you all are taking some time to unplug from what's happening around us everywhere. Go play some fucking video games, have fun, and if you like Elden Ring or Tree, go play it. We're not here to tell you not to do that, but we are going to be live on Monday night playing a video game that has not been disclosed to you all, and then we're going to take a break for the rest of that week, and we'll come back on Monday the 2nd, and then we get back into our somewhat normal scheduling where we'll be back on Wednesday for a week at least, but we will be covering the Game Awards. So the Game Awards, if you we did not mention this earlier, they will be airing on the 12th of December. We will probably be going live shortly thereafter. I think they wrap up around 9 o'clock, but if they do go a little bit past,
fingers fucking crossed.
we plan on starting our episode after the Game Awards, where we will be going down the winners, the losers, and the things that were announced. And that will have us working our way towards, as we mentioned, Monday, the 16th of December, the 18th of December, and the 20th will be our Game of the Year coverage, and we'll make sure to post all the good stuff with that there. But we've got a lot of fun stuff coming up, both in and outside of the show. Chase and I got together. We hammered out what Game of the Year is going to look like this year, and I'm jazzed about it. And we even started mapping out our approach to the casual hour in 2025, and we have some cool stuff that we want to try there. And I think that we will have plenty of reasons for you to come and hang out with us in the weeks and year ahead of us.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit on previous shows about how we're a different kind of show as a two-man group, and I like the things that we're going to be doing for the next year, but it's also going to change the way we do Game of the Year.
Yeah, of course.
Because we could have these, we could just argue. I could just yell at Bobby for an hour until he gives up and lets me pick my game as the Game of the Year. But we thought instead of doing that, we'll find a way that we can both celebrate our favorite things without it having to become a fight every single time. So I think we'll talk more about exactly the mechanics of that when we get closer to the time, or when we get to the time. But just so you know, it's going to be a little bit different, and I think and I'm interested to hear how people react to it and what they think, and if we can tweak the format going forward. But I'm also really excited, as you mentioned, about the plans that we're starting to build out for 2025 and the things that we want to do and the goals that we're setting. And I think there's going to be a lot of cool, fun stuff from the casual hour in 2025, and I'm really looking forward to getting started.
I think we're going to be a bit more laid back in some areas, and we're going to be a bit more representative of just like two friends talking to one another about stuff versus like the production elements of what we're trying to do. And we'll probably break all this down and talk to you a little bit about that when we usually do a resolution
State
episode.
of the Union kind of thing.
Yeah, State of the Union resolution. So we'll break all that in post Christmas time. But Chase, we've got a lot of fun stuff going on. We've gone a little bit past our curfew here, but you've been busy, I know, and I've got you linked here. I did not update your individual one, but I at least have in chat. You can see Chase's Blue Sky handle there, because we have all abandoned the ship known as Twitter or X.
Yeah. Go check my LinkedIn. It has all the links to Blue Sky. And
we don't want to go to LinkedIn. He'll give you a fucking business.
Did I say LinkedIn? I meant Linktree. Sorry.
Linktree.
Yeah. Don't go to my LinkedIn. Nobody needs to go to my LinkedIn. There's nothing there. But yeah, on my Linktree, you can also find links to my YouTube channel, Chase K Plays, where I'm currently playing through Pokemon trading card game. The Game Boy Color one, but with a little twist. I'm playing a ROM hack that brings in the Pokemon cards from Neo Genesis, that brings in like all the second generation Pokemon. It's been really fun so far. It's a series called I'm Just a Bill, and I've been having a great time. The newest episode went out yesterday. It's awesome. Like it was a really fun one, and I'm just having a fucking blast playing a game that I've always loved, but with a brand new paint job and with brand new cards, and it feels like a lost game, and it's fantastic. I've been having a great time. And then I have another podcast I do with my good friend of the show, Piers Corshane. It's called Pilot Program. We watch the first episodes of every television show ever made. Our newest episode is recording this weekend, and will be out maybe before Thanksgiving. We'll see how it goes. But we watched the first episode of Monday Night Football from 1970, which was wild. And here's maybe the best part: the rip that we found of the game has the commercials intact. So I think we're going to have a different segment, or like a sub segment that's like, what were the best commercials from 1970 that we saw here, and just how fucking different life and television and advertising and broadcasting games were in 1970 versus how they were, today. I also watched this week's Monday Night Football just to be like, I don't know, let's see what the brand new Monday Night Football is, and kind of compare and contrast and see the different stuff that they have. So I think that's going to be a really fun one. Go check that out when it's available. But you can go to shows.acast.com/pilot program, find all our old episodes, and that's where the new episode will be when it comes out. Again, hopefully within the week. We'll see.
Love it. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will be back on Monday night with a potential game.